learning, and all sorts of other stuff, and we play games.
This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time, and we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks.
Perfect. Okay, 3 of 4.
El hospital
還元一級の先というのは、本当に誰も知らない字ばっかりでしょうね。私は Okay, we've leveled up and it is time to pick another language. Mordfar tröttare än vanligt. Maten är färdig. And let's see what we're doing when we get back. Greek. We're doing Greek when we get back. Vendetta Day, so had a beautiful day. Fun fact. Turkish. Hello, Shakespeare. How you doing? Fun fact, in Spanish, the word for bishop in chess is alfil. And that actually comes from Arabic. Fil. The same word fil as this. Meaning elephant, because the bishop traditionally was to represent elephant units somehow. Similarly, in Russian, the word for bishop is skor, and that also means elephant. Okay.
This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time, and we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks.
Ça, c'est ça, que c'est ça, non ça, c'est ça. Sol chi sa che nulla sa, ne sa più di chi ne sa. Ecco.
Bonjour et bienvenue à Hyper Polyglotting avec Élise. Moi c'est Élise, traductrice, éditrice et écrivain avec 20 ans de travail. Et ça c'est la transmission en direct ou en jeu des jeux. Surtout GeoGuessr en dernier temps. Et parle des langues, de la linguistique, de l'acquisition des langues.
10-159. Haven't made a huge dent in it, but we're getting there. Okay, gonna do some Chinese now. Nej. Nej. Man. Igen. Jo. 5. Ducks are drinking wine. Bangla, okay, Bangla's is duck. Okay, I have now leveled up. Let's see what the XP situation is now. 10,340 out of 12,500. And as always, viewers can choose my next language for me just with a follow and a $5 to my Patreon. Sotto le frasche del capanno 4 gatti grossi stanno.
Sotto quattro grossi sassi, quattro grossi e grassi gatti. Un généreux déjeuner régénéré des généraux dégénérés. Un généreux déjeuner régénéré des généraux dégénérés. Facile. Sì, sì, ecco, la gente, è la cosa che mi dice la gente, sempre che scoprisce che quante lingue parlo, io sempre avevo l'impressione, diciamo, di che non era così, non era tan così, ma poi, dopo di aver visto qualche poliglota in YouTube, una delle cose che avevo scoperte era giustamente che la metodologia usata da quella gente poliglota che non avevo mai conosciuta prima, era più o meno la stessa metodologia che usavo io. I buy a computer or what? Here's another example. I like to point these out. For this word for or, but sounds vaguely like Hogun and the Hok in Hogun in Korean or Waku in Japanese, and that appears it is the exact same kind of character.
Okay, let me see.
Un chasseur, ça son chassé, ses chassés sont son chien de chasse.
Der dicke Dach.
Okay, der dicke Dachdecker deckt dir dein Dach, drum dank dem dicken Dachdecker, dass der dicke Dachdecker dir dein Dach deckt. Hola y bienvenidos al directo de Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. Yo soy Elisa, traductora, escritora y editora y comunicadora social con más de 20 idiomas de trabajo. Y aquí vamos a estar jugando videojuegos, sobre todo GeoGuessr, y hablando de idiomas, la mejor forma de aprenderlo y caleta más. Zwei Zwetschgenzweigen zwitscherten zwei tschechische Schwalben. Tres tristes tigres tragaban trigo en un trigal en tres tristes trastos. Oh, I see. This is Diche Ishai Fui, which means do you want food? But yeah, are you hungry? That kind of thing. How are the boys? Cocine da boya. Poso milao. Pote. Buenas proteine. Totopolo. In the designated chicken eating area, obviously. Okay, still 3 times I have to defeat him. And I don't have a whole lot of health left.
This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time, and we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks.
Monsieur. Livre. Liwe livla.
Mustan kissan paksut posket.
맞아요.
Yeah.
Yeah. 시. 비서비. 맞아요. 그렇죠. 인데. 고치기. 아. 시.
Track 6.
Aspri petra xes aspri apton ilioxex asproteri. Aspri petra xes aspri apton ilioxex asproteri.
En coginio panas.
Oh boy.
Ferra verda ferra ferda vetri.
هقب. هفد.
Okay.
هفد.
Okay.
هفد. هفد. حق. حق. حق.
Саша по шоссе.
А Саша по шоссе несла сушку на счастье и сосала сушку. А Саша по шоссе несла сушку на счастье и сосала сушку.
معلمة.
The syndicate. And it's from Mu'allim.
Jumani mwalimu mke.
Ирак чима в чипах чемп чавю чи ченчи чини. Чирак чима в чипа да, чирак чима в чипцах чемп чавю чи ченчи чини. Бакакит альшит. Хикрин. Бакакит альши хикрин. Akakit alshi krikrips.
Oh, things speak cat sons. Meow and the pictures of the fish. That's they were wow.
Sööpä. Hupu. Yrittävä. Uraista. Omena.
Are in the city center. And it's got some interesting aspects to it.
여자는 어느 나라에 있습니까? 여자는 어느 나라에 있습니까? 여자는 어느 나라에 있습니까?
Countries or living things.
아니, 너, 나마에 와.
This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time. And we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So, anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks.
Lo que pasa es que bueno, la manera, y esto se ve en tantos lugares, no es cuestión regional, sino más bien de un problema fundamental de la pedagogía oficial de los idiomas extranjeros, y que la manera en que se enseñan en tantos lugares, en las clases, en el colegio, no tiene nada que ver con el estado actual de la investigación sobre lo que se llama adquisición de idioma.
Doesn't, you can try something else.
In fact, I would say often you really know you're getting it with languages if you can't really explain why something's right, but you just bloody well know it's right.
Hi, and welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. I am Elise, translator, editor, and writer with 20 working languages, and this is where we talk about languages,
and language learning and all sorts of other stuff, and we play a game. This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand. Hello and welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. I'm Elise, translator, writer, and editor with 20 working languages, and this is the stream where we're going to be talking more about automatic language growth, specifically automatic language growth Thai, and looking at more not great takes on the subject of input as a way of discussing what input actually is and how to use it best. And on that subject, I was noticing, at this point I have probably about 5 hours more or less of the Comprehensible Thai ALG Thai course under my belt. Hello, Atta, how you doing? And that's basically that's really all I've been doing with Thai. I have not done anything other than watch, Kru A and Kru Ying and Kru Fa and, doing their thing. And I, watched one episode of a Thai TV show, didn't understand a word of it because they were speaking very fast with lots of words that I don't know. But other than that, that is literally all I've been doing with the Thai language. And I'm already finding that I'm forming sentences spontaneously with my very, very limited vocabulary. But, sentences are forming in my head, Nak rian ma ja prate angkrit Gin mon gi bai ka, which, assuming I pronounced it all correctly, I believe means how many pillows do students who come from England eat? Not a great sentence, but I believe that is a grammatically correct sentence. It's just something that came into my head after 5 hours of it. With the limited vocabulary I have. So I would say that is actually a pretty good endorsement of the program that they're doing. I think they do a really excellent job with the way that they structure it and everything. And so I was thinking we could look more at more of this David Long interview, and then look at more. Yeah, I thought it was a very nice sentence. I mean, I would be interested if a Thai speaker shows up if I actually said that correctly, but I think I did. I mean, that sentence is courtesy of the fact that one of the 2 videos of theirs that I watched last night was describing the parts of the bed, which was just actually just kind of hilarious and adorable. I mean, they do a really, this stuff, the subjects that they talk about could be extremely boring because it isn't anything too exciting just inherently. But they managed to make it fun, which is really very much down to their style. I think they do an excellent job. And somebody who is trying to understand how to teach with this method would do well, I think, to actually just look at what they're doing, because they managed to get so much into it. I mean, numbers are everywhere. I mean, it's funny, somebody was saying, we've watched several people say, oh, you can't do numbers with input, it's so hard, you need flashcards for numbers, and it's they quantify everything. They throw numbers into every single context. They find a way to put numbers in there. So you're getting numbers in context, and then doing simple arithmetic with them like that. The other one I watched last night was how tall are people? And it turned out that there is a Swedish giant watching them live 4 years ago. But so they would do things like, how much taller is 190 centimeter tall Swedish guy than Kru Ying, who it turns out could fit in your pocket. And so they would do this in Thai. So you're doing calculations in Thai, or listening to them doing calculations, simple calculations. So you're getting numbers in a context where you're actually using the numbers. So that's So it's just really, I think, well done. Like, at this point, I don't have, like, active use of all of the basic numbers, but I do understand, I can passively understand them all. Like, when I hear them, I understand them. I can't necessarily sort of pull them up on demand yet. Oh, it was. It absolutely was. I mean, the one with the parts of the bed was really funny too, because like, Kru Ying shows like she has a Baby Yoda plushie, actually also a Baby Yoda blanket. She seems to be a bit of a Star Wars fan. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really well done. Like, they find ways, despite the fact that it isn't the most exciting subject matter, to really kind of hold people's interest. And that is really key if you want to make this sort of thing work. Because there has to be a certain amount of motivation to comprehend the input you're getting. Because otherwise, especially since you really... there's going to be a lot that you don't understand, at least initially. You could easily just kind of glaze over and not get anything. I mean, it takes an active effort to put your brain in pairing mode, as I've decided to call it, because I think it is as good a description as any, because it's like this active, receptive mode that you're in. So it's like, and keeping that open for input that you're not necessarily getting a whole lot out of initially is a challenge. But okay, so let's get back to this David Long interview. See what more he has to say, because I was finding that quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're going to keep talking about the debunking the incredulousness, please go for it.
Okay. Oh, that's a good place to start, because I mean we're also talking about the incredulousness. Let me see. Get rid of we don't need the chat. There, we'll get the whole screen. Is this the best they do in terms of is that the best quality? Yeah. I'll just leave that at 720p because that's as good as it gets, even though it is kind of cataracty.
I was going to move on from that. I guess the only other thing about that is I have never been someone thought it was worthwhile trying to convince people.
Yeah.
I got this from Dr. Brown, and he was pretty certain that people are never convinced. Once they've set their mind to something, they need to either hit rock bottom like he did, or die trying.
He's a wise man.
I'm kind of curious what rock bottom means in this context.
Much time. For me, it's all right. If you don't think it's possible, then don't try it. That's good.
Got it.
Don't. It's up to you. And that's pretty much been my approach to that.
Yeah.
So whether that's for better or worse, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and this is also a thing that really can kind of get in the way of the utility of a method like this. Hello, Emily. Because the thing is, the more like psychological resistance you have to what's going on, the less you're going to be in that sort of active, receptive state that allows you to get the maximum benefit.
But that's just...
It's probably for better. It's probably for better. I'm enjoying trying right now. I'm not going to do this the rest of my life, but I'm going to spend a few months seeing if I can convince somebody. And I think I have.
Yeah. No, I don't... So David, I know that there are people who get exposed to it and then it opens up something.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what I'm always looking for.
David, I've got a...
Orlando Pimentel. Hi.
A question from somebody who I think...
So this is an interview for anyone who's just joining us with David Long, who's kind of one of the leading proponents of ALG. He himself, used it to learn Thai. and is also, like, I think the head of the Thai program at the AUA in Thailand. Oh, okay. Yeah, the Discord link. Yeah, let us get the Discord link. Hang on just a second. There we go.
I think I may have helped convince. She's a very eager beginner, and that's, you saw me maybe typing a moment ago. She asked a question, and I think a lot of people have this question about reading and
I hate that.
writing. And I know that the program that Dr. Brown developed and you went through, and that the teachers, all the AUA teachers teach, does include reading and writing, and it's kind of like a natural progression. But I think a lot of people that are like, oh, you're just doing listening, and we're later going to do speaking. When are we going to do reading and writing? How does that work? So,
okay.
Do you mind if we answer that now?
I think David Long's connection is not great.
Or do you think that fits into the flow?
He's
or
frozen.
Would you mind breaking the flow to answer that? I think we were frozen there for a second. Did you hear the question, David?
No, I didn't get the question.
Okay,
Something
I'll start.
about reading and writing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people who don't know much about the method, they come into it and they're like, well, I don't want to just listen. Obviously, I want to speak. And then we're like, yeah, well, the speaking comes naturally after that. And then they're like, well, what about reading and writing?
And I mean, I hope they get into, because, I mean, again, like, David Long has experienced the method from a learner's perspective. And they get into what that means, that speaking just sort of naturally shows up. Because, I mean, I know what my experience of that is. I mean, I just gave an example of my experience for anyone who missed it. That I'm actually finding spontaneously that sentences in Thai are forming with what little vocabulary I have. After, I think I've probably had, like, I don't know, somewhere between 4 and 6 hours. I'm not logging it carefully. I've decided I'm going to continue doing the diary videos, but I'm going to do them a little bit less often so that I can make sure that I have something to talk about each time. So maybe once or twice a week or something like that. But, like, so, I mean, my experience of that sort of thing is that just, you get phrases forming spontaneously in your head. You think a phrase, it may not be a particularly great, remarkable thing, but something forms in your head spontaneously, like, Nakriyan Maja Pratep Angkrit Gin Mon Gibaika, which, I'm probably mispronouncing it somewhat, but, I believe means, how many pillows do the students who come from England eat?
Writing, even like AJAT and these other immersion methods, they have you read first. So how does reading fit in?
And I will say, I tend to be, my own approach tends to be very reading forward, which is where it runs into limitations when you have writing systems that are not phonetic or that do not provide all of the necessary information in their visual medium. Like, I mean, for example, like Chinese, for example, or Arabic or Farsi or Hebrew, where either the character does not actually provide primarily phonetic information, or where things like short vowels are being left out.
And I know that the program developed by Doc Brown and that you did and the teachers teach includes reading and writing.
Oh, Doc Brown, that's the guy who put a time machine in a DeLorean.
But
Right.
A lot of people don't know that. And then the other thing is, I don't even know exactly how reading and writing fits into the process. I know it kind of fits in naturally, right? So maybe you could like touch on that. How does it come together as a whole in the end?
So
about this last week, I had a major pedagogical clash with one of my students. Funny enough, I was showing how beneficial a live stream like this one could serve as a great source of CI. Oh, what was the clash about exactly?
If I can use a child as the perfect example, if you were going to ask me what's the best way to learn a language, I'd say the same way. What's the best way to learn Thai? What's the same way Thais learn Thai?
Got it.
Well, when do they learn to read and write?
After speaking.
And why don't they learn to read and write when they're born?
Yeah, I mean, so the idea is sort of the natural progression. I was just noticing, I am unusually well lit today. Lighting is a challenge in this area, but somehow it's actually working really well today. I think, but yeah, I mean, that makes sense. So you already build up something of a vocabulary. You already have the use of the language, the use of the sounds to a certain extent. And then you're introducing the letters that now are like can be related to sounds that are already familiar to you. That, I mean, there is some sense to that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm sure there are some Thai mothers out there who read to their kids before they're born.
Yeah.
But that's not a natural idea. That's not something you come up with on your own. You have to be educated to think of that, I think.
What kind of videos are you watching?
Right. Something, all right?
Yeah.
So there's a certain element of belief, there's a certain element of idea there and all of that comes into play. But in a natural sense, I'm not convinced yet by anything I've seen that you can beat nature.
Mm-hmm.
Beat it in terms of efficiency. And so if we're going to look at it from a scientific...
I see. Yeah, a lot of people really undervalue this sort of internal receptive part of language. They, because you can't see understanding, for the most part. I mean, that is one of the things that is a challenge when, for example, people will sometimes live stream experiencing input in a language they're trying to learn. And, of course, the thing is, the experience of comprehending a thing happens entirely up in here, and you can't really see it. I mean, at most you see people's eyes like, okay. I mean, which is not, you can do that, externally, even if you don't understand it. People do all the time. So, yeah, a lot of people really undervalue that aspect of it and don't really understand how important it is in order to get to the point where stuff can actually come out of your mouth and it makes sense, and then you understand what somebody says back to you. Okay. That's cool.
Or evolutionary standpoint. Whatever ideas you and I have in our short lifetime, evolution has already gotten past that, probably. And the trade-offs are something we're not aware of. When it comes to things like language. Now, reading and writing, it's more recent.
Much.
Still relatively, I mean, it's quite old, right? People have been doing it a very long time. But it's hard for me to think about if I have a 1-year-old who's not speaking yet. He understands some language, and he doesn't understand some language. To teach him
probably more
to read
doesn't than does.
Seems like a lot of work for no benefit, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, the difference there is that, I mean, when you have older learners, they already have the concept of writing. They already have the concept of reading. So you're just introducing a new version of it to them. And I mean, I'm thinking about it when it comes to my very reading forward approach. It is virtually all writing systems I already know. Like, I mean, you know, fundamentally, it's the Latin alphabet with certain modifications, or it's the Cyrillic alphabet with certain modifications, and stuff like that, or, you know, Hangul, or whatever, which does make it considerably easier, because you're not having to get used to an entire new way of representing sounds and stuff like that. You're getting used to a special case of applying it.
So hour for hour, how can I best enhance his ability? And for me, that's efficiency. Right? So what's going to help him be most efficient? Now, is he going to have a trouble reading and writing once he has vocabulary to read and write? No. I think that's all quite easy to understand. But if I don't know what it means, it ain't going to help me to read it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be interesting to actually, I wonder if anyone's done, like, comparative studies in acquisition of reading and writing proficiency in people who are doing reading and writing from the very start versus people who are using a method like this, where reading and writing comes at a time when they've already got a certain amount of speaking, where they already probably have a fairly significant vocabulary, where they already, you know, are used to the sound system and a fair bit of the syntax and stuff like that. I wonder if anyone has looked at that, because I can really see the value in that. Because, you know, if you're learning the language, if you're learning to write the language and you don't know any words, that then you're doing two things at once, and that can be quite challenging. Especially, you know, you're just getting used to the sound system and the phonology and all that stuff. I would be very interested to see if anyone's ever tried just looking at head-to-head comparisons between those things. I mean, if I keep, you know, I think I'm going to keep this up, and I will just kind of keep reporting back every once in a while on my experience of it, and at some point I suppose I will get into reading and writing. I haven't really done anything with it. I know what Thai writing looks like, but I've not really done anything with it beyond that. And you know, I'll see how it compares to my experience with, say, I don't know, like Arabic or Chinese or something like that.
Right. Exactly.
So for me, the foundation is always understanding is that foundation stone, and you build on that. Mm-hmm. Reading and writing naturally come after speaking, only because speaking follows closely on the heels of understanding.
Yeah.
How's the audio, everybody?
Build your understanding.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you listen first, and then the speaking gradually evolves out of that. Now, I know in the AUA classes they write from the beginning, and so there's some familiarity with the script while you're listening, but you're definitely not even focusing on that, but it's just kind of there in the background, right?
It's there in the background, and that came out of actually that was something that I helped implement over a period of time. But what actually happened when I was a student, we previously had a very well-known structured program, and that was running alongside the classes I was taking.
Oh,
and
good,
so we
good.
had the structural program and then the natural program. The natural program was maybe 80% of the whole. But we still used the reading and writing classes from the structural program. And they were pretty good, but they were completely wrong for me. I've been spending the last 8 months here.
See, again, this is why I think it's very useful for people who are teaching languages to have like a learner's perspective, especially in the because you notice things like this. Like, you notice, oh, okay, this makes sense in theory, it seems to work halfway okay, but it did not do any good for me, and then maybe you come up with a better approach as a result of that. I think that is really a strength that people who actually learn languages themselves bring to the process.
Doing all this work to get out of that old mode of learning, like, you know, and now you're going to plunge me back into that. And I rejected it. It was like, oh, I can't eat any more of that kind of food at all. You know, it's horrible. And so we designed a natural reading program that went on for a few years, maybe 5 or 6 years. It was just really tough to sell it.
I'm really curious what that program looks like and how it compares to the structural version that he was talking about there. I hope he gets into that, because that sounds really interesting.
I think it helped me a lot. I remember it was all exposure, like listening classes. The teacher would read, I'd follow along with the group of 5 or 6 students that were there. We'd follow along and read things more and more complex. But one of the things that was hard for me was the written language and the spoken language are actually often quite different.
Yes.
And words you don't find in spoken language are written.
Yes, sir.
And the words you write aren't spoken. So that threw me off quite a bit.
Okay, and, that's good to know. Something to look forward to.
The end result of all of that work it did with me and a few others was, you know, we'll introduce the writing in class in situations where you don't have to guess too hard. You can realize that's a month of the year. You know, or a letter or a number or something.
Let me see. It's definitely more recent than the thing that Evildea was reacting to that we checked out. Let me see. 4 years ago. This is 4 years ago. And let me just drop the link in chat for anyone who wants to watch the whole thing as well. Wish YouTube would give more specific dates than that. Sometimes I'm looking for something like, you know, something for like research that I'm doing on something, and it's like somebody admitted or, you know, said something that indicated that they knew a certain thing, and then I want to know, for like the purposes of what I'm working on, when did they say this? Like, when, you know, when did they acknowledge knowing this or whatever? And then YouTube is totally worthless for that, because it's like, about 11 years ago. It's like, well, what the hell does that mean? I want to know if this is before or after, you know, the 13th of January 2015 or something.
And that can still throw students off. I had a student recently who quit for a period of time to go learn the written language, so he didn't feel lost when we use it on the board on occasion.
Interesting.
And that's not healthy. I think that's not a good thing.
And why is that?
Well, because he still doesn't know what's going on. And it indicates a bigger, maybe what I think of as a deeper problem.
Okay.
Right? So
okay, I'm interested in this. Because, I mean, to me, I feel like you can go either way on this. Oh, it does tell you the full date. Oh, that's good to know. If you click on the about 14 years ago or whatever, it gives you the full date. Oh, well, that is very useful to know, because that has been a huge pain in the ass for me on many occasions.
The deeper problem is this. If I cannot adjust to guessing
right
about meaning, I will never learn in this way very well at all. So let me put that in a practical thing. If you're running a program, you want to make sure students don't get into a level they're comfortable in. If this is the first time you've learned a language through this method, you want to be in a class where you feel like you can't touch the bottom of the pool.
Yeah, I mean, this is what he's talking about here is essentially what Krashen calls, you know, I+1. Because the idea is you want to make sure that the input has at least some things that are just a little bit beyond the person's level. Because that will allow them to continue growing. That will allow them to continue developing further understanding. Whereas if it's totally at their level, if they understand every single thing that's going on, then there's nothing that they have to, there's no stretch going on. It's just sort of stasis.
You know, I don't know how to swim, and my feet don't touch the bottom here.
Interesting.
If you can touch the bottom, you're going to spend your time walking around on the pool instead of swimming.
Got it.
And
yeah, I mean, this is very much, this is exactly what is meant by I+1 for when we talk about in Krashen's terminology.
Is a tough one. That's the first part. You got to face that. And if you're not facing it, then you've learned to walk with crutches from the start. And a lot of programs and a lot of teachers help you do that.
Yeah.
That was the biggest challenge I think we had. And
I mean, I have to say, crutches are really not used very well as an analogy a lot of the time, because the whole point of crutches is you fucked up your leg, and you need to not, or maybe both of them, or maybe, whatever, and you need to not put so much weight on it so that it can heal, so that you will be able to get back to using it fully. So when it's used in this sense, where it's something that impedes progress, I think that actually, fundamentally misunderstands what the role of a crutch is.
Still have within ALG is teachers think they've got to explain the language, and they're short-cutting the process, they're short-circuiting the process, and they're cheating the student out of a otherwise good experience.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, they do not do any explanation of structures at all. There's no, if they do, I don't understand a word of it in these comprehensible Thai videos that I've been watching. But I've got a lot of structure. In again, somewhere between 4 and 6 hours or whatever. I have gotten quite a lot, because they manage to, they will introduce things, and then they will make somewhat more complex sentences, and you get this idea of how it's all fitting together, and it gives you actually, it's interesting, because I have to sort of, in order to do what I'm doing with it, on the one hand, sort of put myself into pairing mode, and just, let it wash over me, and just, go on the ride they're taking me on. But on the other hand, sort of go back and analyze what's going on. And when I analyze what's going on later, I realize I actually have a fairly detailed account of the way that the Thai language is structured at this point. It branches to the right, which is to say modifiers come after. If you want, you can just, you don't need some special complementizer to indicate when you have a full sentence. For example, if you want to say the students who come from England eat 5 pillows, just to use my weird ass example from earlier that just kind of came to my head spontaneously, you can just say, you could just add on, you have the sentence, the students come from England, and if you add on eat 5 pillows, then that already works as the students who come from England eat 5 pillows. So that is an important bit of structural information. So I have actually, as a result of all this, a fairly detailed account of how the language is laid out. I mean, if I think about it more, things like classifiers and where those go, sentence ending particles and things like that. They've never explained any of that stuff. They just show it in action, and they change the moving parts enough that, if you go back and want to do it, you're sort of a grammar nerd analytical frame to think about what you've just experienced, you learn a lot. You actually see that you've acquired a lot because you're understanding these structures as they're using them.
It's like the comedian who gets up and explains every joke.
Yeah.
If everybody remembers the fucking the health ranger, this guy who did these he had this hoax website called Natural News, which is just full of all sorts of bullshit. And he would have these cartoons on it. And the cartoons would include a paragraph explaining what the joke was. Every single time. Even when it was not actually all that complicated a joke. It would be like, this is what this is about. It's like, I looked at the cartoon, I knew what it was about, it just wasn't very good.
Really.
Yeah, what's the point?
Right. And they don't realize it. They're in goodwill doing that to help the student, but it's not. It's actually hurting them.
Got it.
And so I would always try to stretch the student out of their depth. I wouldn't force them,
Right.
but I would definitely encourage them out of the deep end, or out into the deep end as quick as possible.
Got it. So, David, just to take a quick breath here, character traits that are both needed and developed by the program. So far, we have
Okay, this is interesting.
Patience and tolerance for ambiguity. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, those definitely fit in there. I mean, you have to be willing. You have to be willing to just accept that this is going to make sense. That if you have good teachers doing it, you will eventually be able to make some sense out of what they're saying. It will at some point start to work. But for a while, you're not going to understand a word of what's going on.
Okay, anything else that I'm missing here?
Well, we were almost touching on it earlier, but there's this, I wouldn't call it a character trait, but it fits into this kind of category-wise. But if you think about the kind of person who comes at something with an open mind, as opposed to a person who comes at it with a closed mind, the ability to be open-minded is another, and to be honest, there are people who have a closed mind about things.
Yes.
So I would have students come and complain about the teachers talking about prostitution, because for them, their mind was closed. That's a bad thing.
Oh, missionaries and stuff, right?
Well, that's a big topic here.
Yeah, it is.
And you can.
I have to say, I mean, if missionaries wash out of the language courses that allow them to manipulate people better, I think that's actually a result. This somehow reminds me of these two Mormon missionaries who were walking around Santiago de Chile a few years ago, who were telling people que tienen un gran consolador en Jesucristo. Un gran consolador. Which they thought meant like a consoler, a provider of solace, but actually what they were saying was that in Jesus Christ, they have a big dildo. They were walking around and telling people this. And, I mean, I have to say, if it makes missionaries less effective, I'm okay with it. Yeah, you have to have, I would call it receptiveness. You have to be able to just sit there, know you're not going to understand a damn thing for at least, the first 15 minutes or whatever, and pay attention to every single thing you see. Every single thing you hear, you just have to understand that, the understanding will emerge from the experience. And, I mean, I have to say, these missionaries are... Hey, Riveroon, you came at a great moment. Great timing there. I mean, you do have to you will eventually have to know these words, because they are things people talk about. So, finding yourself in a situation, walking out of it, I wouldn't, just because the subject is broached, I wouldn't necessarily...
all you want about it, but if you want to learn about Thailand, that's one of many things you need to learn about. Sort of like chili peppers.
I mean, literally, practically any society, practically any society you find, there are people engaged in sex work. It is a thing that happens.
Eating
Also
more
a bad
eat 'em,
evil
right. Yeah. So the thing of all of that is that this whole characteristic of having an open mind fits right hand in glove with guessing. So I tell people all the time, look, if you're in the class, just get comfortable guessing.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting when I think about it. The things that make you very good at analyzing situations with inadequate information, that, like sort of media analysis, intelligence analysis kind of situations, that sort of mindset of being able to try to hypothesize a bit about the bits you can't see, while at the same time being open to the possibility that it's something completely different than what you've come up with as a hypothesis or hypotheses. That's actually, I mean, that is really that is a strength for language acquisition too.
And then I say a wrong guess is 100 times better than a right answer.
Yeah, that's just given to you.
And the reason is a right answer closes your mind. A wrong guess, you're still open. And that's the vital characteristic. That's the vital thing that people have to have.
Yeah, because it's all about making all these connections. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, weird example sentences are great. You want because people will remember them. If you like my sentence that came to mind in Thai about eating pillows. I mean, that's complete nonsense. But it's memorable.
You're calling as a fortune cookie writer. Man, this is awesome.
Yeah. But that's the heart of it. That's the key right there.
Yeah.
And again, you come back to the young child, right? Everything is modeled for us in the 1-2-year-old child.
Right.
And I'll specify that age.
Okay.
Show me any other program that tries to teach you language for a 1 to 2-year-old. That's what we're doing. It doesn't compare to teaching a language to a 5-year-old. We're not there yet.
Yeah, because you're dealing with the most basic levels of the language.
Yeah.
That's reading and writing, right? That's when you do the A.
Dumplings are like little pillows. Yeah, exactly. And the only reason that came up is because those are the words that I have. I have words about eating, I have words about people coming from places, I have some names of countries, and just last night I was watching, they were talking about the parts of a bed. So I got pillow.
BCs and count to 12. We don't start that with 1-year-olds.
Yeah.
But when you come to a place...
But it's suggested. It is prefigured. There's a lot of prefigurativeness that goes on.
Thai at first. You're like a 1-year-old kid. Why do you want to learn to read and write? You can't even hold a pen yet. Just get off it. Relax a bit,
Yeah.
You're not going to do it faster.
Yeah.
Now, here's the other thing that seems obvious to me. Science tells us, everyone in science tells us that kids learn better. From the birth to 5 years old, they're the fastest. They're the best at learning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, languages, certainly. And, one of the interesting things has been, this is largely thanks to a lot of the work that's been done on input-based approaches, that it turns out a lot of what's called the critical period kind of disappears, or at least gets postponed considerably, extended considerably, if you start to use more effective methods, as opposed to, drilling grammar and stuff, and lots of memorization.
Just do what they do. You can't get better than that. Nothing you come up with is going to be better or faster than that.
Has anyone come to class with adult diapers and a pacifier in their mouth?
No, not yet.
That's modeling. But yeah, no, for sure.
But that's the model. It's right there for us, It's
right
in front of our face. Yeah.
I love it. It's beautiful, and it's so true, right? But like, it's that elusive obvious that people like. It's like right in front of your face, but you're like, no, it's got to be something more, complex and more difficult.
Yeah. And it's really not. So if I had to give you a 1 minute, like, I'm dying, here's ALG, take it and go.
Yeah, it's sort of the Hillel version.
1 to 2 year old kids.
As in the original guy, not the pro-Israel student group.
Those are your teachers. Do what they do. If they don't do it, you don't. That's how.
Actually, this Orlando says, this makes me think about an interesting thing I've been doing. I gave into the compulsion of reviewing Anki every day, but what I do after the session is putting all the words on AI and to create the most bizarre story. Yeah. I mean, I find, in fact, I would take the AI out of it and just like and use the words yourself and just think up the ridiculous story. I think you will get more benefit out of that, because then you are, constructing this thing yourself.
Not a pattern of program. You want to design it, do what works for them.
Got it.
And then put adults in there instead of kids.
Okay. Karen, we need to make another baby.
There you are.
Oh no.
Oh well, his microphone's working.
That's beautiful advice, and I need to think on that. Tom, one of my good language learning friends here, Tom asked about something that I think a lot of people are concerned about. They're like, well, if I don't absolutely know it from a book, I'm going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
People are going to laugh at me. And apparently Thai people do laugh at people who make mistakes. So what's the advice on that? And I think you kind of touched on it, but...
Okay.
Do we get, specifically on that?
Apparently all the rest of this, the entire remainder, is just under a chapter called Mistakes, so I'm kind of curious. We may just switch over. Well, after the break, we'll switch over and look at some other stuff. Let's see where this goes.
I remember once having a several-hour conversation with Dr. Brown, about the similarities between French and Thai.
Okay.
And actually, the context of our conversation was that, why don't we teach English this way?
Okay.
And his answer was simple. He said, well, we could. It's just that I can't find any new beginners in English enough to interest me.
For sure.
Everyone's already, they've got a smattering of English. It gets in the way for me. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I understand that better now than before.
Though, I mean, you could still do the thing in the sense that what you're doing is the course is you're just talking about stuff and you're introducing things that the person doesn't necessarily already have. So I mean, it's essentially you're just having a conversation. This is where actually something like TPRS would make sense to bring into it, because you've already got people who can contribute actively to a discussion.
But Thai is a perfect language because it's obscure enough people don't know it. So we get a lot of newcomers, people who don't know anything about Thai coming in. So it makes it a really good language than, compared to a lot of others. But they're similar to the French in that they have a very high expectation of what accurate or clear means. So to put that in sort of more simple terms, my name pronounced in Thai takes on Thai pronunciation. It doesn't hold English pronunciation.
Right.
Oh, well, I mean, he has a handy surname there because long is a totally acceptable Thai syllable, I think. Yeah, the more it comes from your own, it's both more memorable and you're making more connections.
Right? Going back the other way, their names hold the Thai pronunciation. They'll change their name before they'll let it be slaughtered by English rules. Okay? You get that? So it's a very interesting kind of cultural as well as linguistic interesting point.
Yeah.
But the upshot of that is if you don't speak Thai well, you're going to get laughed at. But the thing you got to realize is if you do speak Thai well, you're going to get laughed at.
Yeah.
And if you don't look like a Thai, you'll never be a Thai for most Thais anyway, so don't worry about it. If you can't get over that,
And probably, I would imagine, although it's probably different in Thailand, you will pleasantly surprise most of the people you encounter because they're not used to people who aren't from there having any Thai. Although if you're in the country, that's probably less likely to be the case. Oh, what was the thing, Riveroon? Now I'm curious.
don't waste your time. There's no way to go from I don't know Thai to I do this really well unless all you want to do is practice a few phrases and get them perfect. The master of doing that was James Marvin Brown. He was the guy who did that better than anybody.
Huh. Before the ALG method was developed? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. He was like fantastic. His Thai was immaculate.
For like 5
seconds? He could remember and recreate it. No. He was also very smart and capable. So,
interesting.
He knew how to use Thai, and he had a depth. Thai people would come and talk to him about Thai.
Interesting.
Yeah, very, very well versed in Thai language and ancient Thai as well. So there was a lot of background to that. But he says my Thai passed his when he was about 4.5 years.
Whoa.
Oh, that sounds like a fairly good endorsement.
I make mistakes all the time.
Okay.
I have never cared about making mistakes.
I love it. If you were going to call that, if you were going to give that a 1 or 2 word character trait label,
embarrassment tolerance.
What would you call it?
So, I don't know. But I know how to put it, I know how to make it concise and make better sense.
Okay.
In the classroom, you want to focus. We were earlier talking about what do you tell students when they first show up, right?
Yeah.
You want to focus on meaning, not on language.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is what the entire method is about. It's about understanding messages.
Focus on what's happening.
The entire just universe of input-based methods. It's about understanding messages.
Not on words and phrases and pronunciation. Yeah. All right? Now, I would say the same thing when it's time to speak. And there's no time now it's time to speak, and yesterday it wasn't. There's nothing like that.
Okay.
But it's a gradual, I can say a few new words all the time.
Yeah.
So you constantly get put into these
stuff just bubbles up.
I got 5 words right now, that 6th one's messing me up, kind of situation. But you want to focus on what is it you're trying to say, not on the words you're using to say it. And if your mind is focusing on the words you're giving a speech, you're really not communicating anyway.
Okay.
Not in a way that's effective for one-on-one talking with people.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not. You want to connect with people. If I want to connect with 500 or 5,000 people, I might.
That's rather a lot of people.
Memorize it, and with very much a different sort of intention, talk from that speech. That's a different kind of communicating, and it's
oh right. Yeah, I remember this.
Only because there's so many people out there.
Right.
I couldn't get away doing that with anybody I know of one-on-one. It'd be hilarious.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so you shouldn't try to do that in Thai either. If I've got to pre-think it in Thai, I better go back to the drawing board on that. And that became, in later years with ALG for me, even when Brown was still alive, we started going down this path. He let me go. He didn't stay involved at any level where this was related, but he would.
Was that, God, what is it called? Polyglottalot, possibly?
Was privy to it.
Or was it some, I don't think, no, it wasn't Zamani Zulu.
But I started diminishing. He used to have a conversation around damage, the silent period, not talking, and how you'll hurt your language ability and all of that. It isn't anything. It's an interesting conversation and an interesting idea, and you're going to believe it or not believe it, and a lot of people don't like it, and then they come to realize it's true or not, whatever. I just grew away from it because for me it didn't make any sense. It makes sense academically, I get it, and I don't want to do anything to encourage people to start speaking before they're ready. Right. But I do want them to start speaking when they are.
Yeah, this is another thing. I mean, I've noticed when people are talking about methods like this that they often seem to get wrong. Like the idea that, first of all, you have this idea that you basically just never speak. As opposed to the basic idea is you start speaking when you're ready, when speech starts happening. And the other thing is the assumption that when people are saying that speech will come as a result of input, that they're saying that you will be able to, that you will have like really like cultivated speech immediately just as a result of input, which, I mean, that's not how it ever works. Like, if you want to speak well, be a good public speaker, speak eloquently and stuff like that, and, project and all of that. In any language, you do have to start doing more of it. The idea is not that you will be speaking perfectly from the moment that you first have speech emerge. You will probably not speak very well at all, but stuff will be coming out, and then it gets to be more and more. And with that, I am going to take a quick bio break. I will be back in just a couple of minutes. Emote. Hi, and welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. I am Elise, translator, editor, and writer with 20 working languages, and this is where we talk about languages and language learning and all sorts of other stuff, and we play games. This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time. And we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks.
Perfect. Okay, 3 of 4.
還元1級の先というのは本当に誰も知らない字ばっかりでしょうね。私は
Okay, we've leveled up, and it is time to pick another language. Morfar tröttare än vanligt. Maten är färdig. And let's see what we're doing when we get back. Greek. We're doing Greek when we get back. Ben neredeyse her gün okula gideyim. Fun fact. Turkish. Hello, Shakespeare. How you doing? Fun fact, in Spanish, the word for bishop in chess is alfil. And that actually comes from Arabic. Fil, the same word fil as this, meaning elephant, because the bishop traditionally was to represent elephant units somehow. Similarly, in Russian, the word for bishop is skor, and that also means elephant.
This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time, and we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description for how to do so, and everybody who has already supported it has my sincerest thanks.
Ça, ça, c'est ça, ça, che c'est ça, non ça, c'est ça, sol chi sa che nulla sa, ne sa più di chi ne sa. Ecco. Bonjour et bienvenue à Hyperpolyglotting avec Élise. Moi, c'est Élise, traductrice, éditrice et écrivain avec 20 ans de travail. Et ça, c'est la transmission en direct ou en jeu des jeux. Surtout GeoGuessr en dernier temps. Et parle des langues, de la linguistique, de l'acquisition des langues.
10:159. Haven't made a huge dent in it, but we're getting there. Okay, gonna do some Chinese now. Night. Night. Come on. Yen. Yo. 5. Ducks are drinking wine. Barbaz, okay, Barbaz is duck. Okay, I have now leveled up. Let's see what the XP situation is now. 10,340 out of 12,500. And as always, viewers can choose my next language for me just with a follow and a $5 to my Patreon.
Sotto le frasche del capanno 4 gatti grossi stanno. Sotto 4 grossi sassi, 4 grossi e grassi gatti. Un généreux déjeuner régénéré des généraux dégénérés. Un généreux déjeuner régénéré des généraux dégénérés. Facile. Sì, ecco, la gente... è la cosa che mi dice la gente, sempre che scopri che quante lingue parlo. Io sempre avevo l'impressione, diciamo, di che non era così, non era tan così, ma poi dopo di aver visto qualche poliglota in YouTube, una delle cose che avevo scoperte era giustamente che la metodologia usata da quella gente poliglota che non avevo mai conosciuta prima, era più o meno la stessa metodologia che usavo io.
I buy a computer or quack, and here's another example. I like to point these out. For this word for or, quack sounds vaguely like Hogun and the hok in Hogun in Korean or waku in Japanese, and that means it is the exact same kind of character.
Okay, let me see.
Un chasseur, ça son chassé. Ses chassés sont son chien de chasse.
Der dicke Dach.
Okay, der dicke Dachdecker deckt dir dein Dach, drum dank dem dicken Dachdecker, dass der dicke Dachdecker dir dein Dach deckt. Hola y bienvenidos al directo de Hyperpolyglotting with Elise. Yo soy Elisa, traductora, escritora, editora y comunicadora social con más de 20 idiomas de trabajo. Y aquí vamos a estar jugando videojuegos, sobre todo GeoGuessr, y hablando de idiomas, la mejor forma de aprenderlo y caleta más. Zwei Zwetschgenzweigen zwitscherten zwei tschechische Schwalben. Tres tristes tigres tragaban trigo en un trigal en tres tristes trastos.
Oh, I see. This is Diche Ishai Boyd, which means do you want food? But yeah, are you hungry? That kind of thing. How are the boys? Cocine ta boya. Poso milao. Pote. Buenas, proteína. Protopulo. In the designated chicken eating area, obviously.
Okay, still 3 times I have to defeat him. And I don't have a whole lot of health left. This is Elise with an update on the ongoing Inessa Armand translation project. We now have 37 of the 38 extant essays and speeches by Inessa Armand translated into English for the first time. And we are just short of the halfway mark on the fundraising progress as well. This enrichment of the English language Marxist canon has only been possible with your support, and it's been a real lifeline for me. So anyone who would like to support this project can find links in the description. Alright, and I'm back. Yeah, that's right. It was Polyglot a lot. Yeah. It was one of his students who'd gotten permission to film for a final project showing their progress who said the Kim Jong-un jacuzzi story. Yeah, I remember this now. So, I was thinking we could go back and continue watching our bad input take of the day. Party chicken who defends Kim Jong-un. Well, yeah, why not? Why not be a party chicken?
I put it in there so that I can learn to utilize that in conversation.
Oh, right. He was talking about the flashcard that is the series of flashcards that is just I can't eat X, I am allergic to X. And yeah, of course the thing is you could probably actually find more useful ways of acquiring language to discuss food allergies if you just looked up food allergies in Chinese on YouTube.
As a chunk, as part of a greater part of my language, okay? And I think a lot of people misunderstand when I talk about flashcards. You're not meant to learn the whole language through flashcards. You're meant to learn specific templates that can be reutilized in various different places.
The thing is, okay, but then it doesn't make sense to talk about flashcards beating input or input beating flashcards in the first place, because you're saying that flashcards now are just an adjunct to input, which is a very different thing. Then they're not competing, you're just finding a sort of little niche for them.
And then the input cements the connections between this, so all the comprehensible input. It cements the connections between all of these chunks and allows and opens up more connections that you were unaware of.
Yeah, and again, as I was talking about last time, This is very different to the take that that we were looking at. He is very. This is the synthesis. He has very much synthesized what Steve Kaufman said about flashcards, without really sort of acknowledging that he has actually kind of changed what he's saying here.
It's there to prime your brain. I'll give you another example, okay?
I mean that is like literally the word that Steve Kaufman used for it.
Ages ago, I don't have this in my Anki deck anymore, but I put this in there when I was practicing Chinese and I was making videos in Chinese. And I realized I don't know how to say in this video, or in... Like, I knew how to say it if I stopped, thought about it, and like logically put the grammar together. I realized then, okay, but I could not just naturally produce this in the moment as needed. So in my production deck, which is my practice deck, I added that structure in, but not just that structure. I swapped out the bit where it says in this video with in a previous video, and in the next video, in my previous Chinese video, in this Chinese video, in my next Chinese video, the most likely things that I'm going to say to help teach my brain that there is a structure that happens.
I mean, the wild thing about this one is, this is one you could absolutely get just by watching certain, like, Chinese YouTube videos and stuff, because people will invariably be saying that at least some of the time. Yeah, this is the one where now he's like agreeing with Steve Kaufman on this at the same time as not acknowledging that he had previously pushed back quite hard on the things that he's saying here.
Here, and that there is swappable components to this structure. And now, if I need to, I can say, 我在这个视频里讨论这个话题. So I am in this video discussing this topic, okay? That just naturally flowed off my tongue. There's plenty of the language in Chinese which I cannot say easily at this stage because I have not practiced the underlying structures. But that structure that I just utilized, I just said, you know, in this video we're discussing this topic. That's not something I've actually said. Those are two separate chunks. I've never individually practice that as one thing in Anki. I practice two separate chunks, you know, discussing a topic.
Like, but this is except now he's getting into something that's quite different, because what Steve Kaufman was saying, and what I happen to actually think is totally, I tend to agree with. There are different ways of doing it, but you could certainly use flashcards this way. Is you have stuff that is very closely related to the input that you are about to experience, and it is supposed to be easy. It is not supposed to be a memory challenge. It is supposed to be a way of, like, refreshing your memory and saying, okay, this is a word you're about to hear, and this is what it means. And you just sort of look at it a few times and say, okay, so now you know that Ginma, eat pillows, is going to be in the video.
Or discussing X, and in this video about X, okay. Now, because I practice those structures and I've used...
I mean, one thing to note, though, when he says, like, in this X, the structures in Chinese actually are not, it's not just going to be the word for video that gets swapped out, because there are different classifiers that are attached to the word for this. And this is something that you would organically get if you're doing it from input. But it would not necessarily, but if you're doing it from the sort of memorization approach, which is, again, a very different approach. It is based on a fundamentally different concept of what you're doing. You're not going to get that.
Them, I can now just easily shove them together, you know. So I can do the same thing about the Steve Kaufman one, you know. I can say, 在我上一个关于 Steve Kaufman 的视频里. So in my previous video about Steve Kaufman, okay. So there again, there's a structure that I practiced previously via Anki, and it's one that I would use quite a bit as a YouTuber. That's the point of Anki, is to, well, that's the point of these kind of flashcards.
But now he's back to not understanding
types of flashcards. So
like, now he's using the term priming, and apparently he's decided he doesn't know what it means, because this is a very different thing from that, actually.
audio ones, and the audio ones have a completely different purpose to the production ones. Their purpose is to help your brain actually hear really information dense structures, because there are certain structures in every language which are...
I mean, you could do this just by listening to information dense structures on the subject that you want to be talking about and stuff, though, and it would probably be much more effective since you wouldn't just be memorizing matching pairs.
Highly information dense, as you pointed out, numbers being one of them.
Continuity, there's no overarching frame. It's the same structure with different fillers repeated 30 times. That's not stacking layers of context. A better word for that, again, is repetition.
Yeah.
There's really no
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is not... That is not... That's right, because what we kind of left off on was not understanding what context means when we're talking about this sort of thing.
Overarching
You can call it repetition, you can call it context, but...
those are different things. You can't just say, oh, this is context, this is repetition. This is, it is not the same thing. It's not just different names for the same thing. When we're talking about context, we're in in this context of discussing input-based methods, context is a much bigger thing. It's not just, the words around something in a sentence.
But essentially, at the end of the day, the purpose here is to get these structures into your brain and able to utilize them. So if this is going to come down to a video about debating semantics, context...
This isn't debating semantics, this is understanding what you're talking about. This is literally understanding what the fundamental difference here is, because the difference is fundamental. The entire, conceptualization of the model is different. It's the difference between memorizing phrases, memorizing word meaning pairs, or sound meaning pairs, and developing a network of mental connections between concepts and sounds and words and whatever. Very different, very different thing.
Context versus not what is context and what isn't context. Well, it has context. You just didn't see the context. The context for me having that flashcard was I've needed to utilize that structure in my real world. Now, to make your argument, there probably would have been...
But that isn't the kind of context that, when we're talking about input, matters. It is the kind of context in which the phrase, in which you are exposed to the phrase. A scene, a dialogue, stuff like that.
Better examples you could have taken from my Anki deck, which to the average viewer would make no sense, but they all have context. It's just...
No, they don't.
I don't need to add that context in because I know where it came from.
That's not... That is a completely different thing.
I created the cards.
Continuity between the...
He really just does not understand what the conversation is about, really.
Two sentences, I'm allergic to shrimp and I'm allergic to eggs. If you were at a restaurant and you heard those two things in succession, there would be overarching continuity. But just having those two sentences beside...
Yeah, but here's the risk, okay? So that is a very, very vital, important structure for my life. It's something that I need to be able to hear, and it's something I need to be able to produce.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about really here. We're talking about how you acquire it, whether you're trying to use rote memorization and sort of brute force it into your head, or whether you're putting it into an overarching context that allows you to develop connections around the words like warming, allergy, and stuff like that. Because these are fundamentally different things. He really, I have found nothing that actually convinces me that I was wrong at my assessment that he thinks that that language acquisition is just about memorizing pairings between words and meanings. And so the question is, which is the most efficient way to memorize pairs, memorize words and phrases? And so he does not actually understand what the discussion is about. Like, this guy seems to have, this Nick, I'm not familiar with him, but he seems to have much more of an understanding of what we're actually talking about here.
I can't wait for enough real-life lived experiences to learn that structure the hard way.
Yeah, but first of all, it's not the hard way, it's the effective way. Second of all, you don't need to experience it in real life lived experiences necessarily. You look up a video about food allergy. You look up create a playlist of videos of people talking about food allergies in Chinese. That's what we're talking about. I'm sure we could find them. Like seafood allergies, tree nut allergies. I'm sure if we go on YouTube and do a search, we will find people in videos talking about food allergies in all sorts of different ways. And that is what we're talking about here.
Okay? I don't want to be making that mistake.
Each other, there's no overarching continuity. It seems like Evildea thinks Steve's argument hinges on this idea that flashcards are one word per card, but that's just not true.
Well, the reason I thought that is because he actually gave demo of Link Q, or I think that's how it's pronounced. I keep getting it wrong. And it literally is that. Like, you see the word and then you just see one word. So that's why I base my argument on that. If Steve actually is not of that belief, then...
I mean, and he isn't, because that's not... This is just Evildea not understanding what the conversation's about again.
And I take it back, okay? If his belief is that you should be using entire structures and stuff, then I'm... Okay, cool. I follow.
No, that isn't... When he's talking about simple pairings, that's what we're talking about here. He was saying, no, it's not a pair, because look, there's more words. And, I mean, that's not... Like, the pairing is between the phrase and the meaning, the structure and the meaning. That is what a simple pair is. That is what a matching pair is. It does not hinge on the number of words. Because the point he was making was much broader than that.
I vibe with that.
Steve's structural argument does not depend on flashcards being one word per card. It depends on flashcards being discrete and context isolated, which is true of any flashcard system, no matter how sophisticated. The underlying theory behind...
This guy sounds very angry at me. I think a lot of what he's saying has made a great deal of sense. I think his critique of what Evildea is saying is actually has been totally valid. But it's like he sounds pissed off when he talks into the microphone.
Steve's argument, as he explicitly states, is that language is understood as a network of experiences in your head, as opposed to discrete phrases and words.
Okay. I can agree with that. Yes, language is...
Yeah, but it's like, okay, he can agree with that, but there are all sorts of things that flow from that in terms of the ways that, in the most effective ways in which you acquire language, what acquiring language even is. You can agree with, to agree with that is to actually buy into a whole set of ideas about how all of this works and what it even is.
A very, very large network of experiencing words, the connections between them. However, I don't know if we're debating this topic or not.
Yeah, but we are. That's the thing. This fundamentally comes down to different ideas about what acquiring a language is about. That is what the whole thing is, whether it is memorizing words and phrases and structures, or whether it is developing a network of connections between sounds and meanings and context and things like that through exposure by comprehending messages. And those are two fundamentally different ways of thinking about it, with fundamentally different implications for what you're doing.
Realistically, it does not matter, because the point of a flashcard...
Realistically, it matters a lot. Realistically, it is completely a different thing, because if you start from the idea that this is not a task of memorizing words and phrases and stuff, that it is in fact about developing these deep neural connections between meanings and sounds and things like that, which you develop through experiences that involve you understanding messages, comprehensible messages in your target language, then the entire idea of how you go about it is going to be different, and the role of something like flashcards is substantially reduced, to what, like, Steve Kaufman was saying, namely that it's like priming to help you engage with the input, as opposed to a way you sort of cram stuff into your head.
Is to prime your brain for certain types of structures, words, and experiences.
But that's not exactly, I mean, it was about priming your brain for the input it's about to receive. So if you're going to do a unit of an input-based class on, I don't know, like car parts, and so you say, and so you have like some flashcards that say things like Motorhaube or Auspufferrohr or, like Katalysator or whatever. So if you're doing this in German, then you're priming yourself for words you're about to hear in the context of this input-based unit that you're doing, where you're talking about stuff that is part of a car or whatever. That is not the same thing. That is why it's called priming, because it is something that's happening immediately prior to the experience you're going to have with this input, as opposed to just sitting there and like cramming this stuff in your head for an hour.
So that you don't have to wait for them to slowly, over time, enter your brain.
Like, that's not what he means by priming. Like, he really does not understand. It's like, he really does not understand what the discussion is about. He does not understand how these terms are being used. It's like, he really would do so much better if he actually sat down and really read about what the thinking is behind all of this, what the theory of it is, so he could understand the difference between what he's talking about and what people he's arguing against are talking about. Because it is fundamentally a matter of, like, just completely not understanding
and to allow you,
subject.
once you've primed it, to then hear it more easily. It's basically just greasing the wheels.
And I want to break into that more because, in my opinion, I think this is the crux of the category error that Evildea is making. To explain that further, I have to expand Steve's metaphor. So I'm going to talk about what Steve actually means when he talks about networks in the brain. To me...
Okay. This is good because it is, I really would hope, because he does actually have a lot of people listening to him, that this is a moment where he actually learns some things, because this is, I have a feeling this guy's about to actually do a reasonable job of explaining this, because he seems to know he seems to have at least some fairly good idea what he's talking about here. I don't really know much about him. I only heard about him because Evildea is responding to him because he responded to Evildea. But it would be good if this like gets through to him and makes him understand that we're dealing with a totally different model here. Like, progress could be made. It would be good.
Okay, so you're going to talk on behalf of Steve. Be careful doing that for other YouTubers.
The best way to visually demonstrate this is to
It doesn't require... the thing is, what Steve is saying is not just Steve. What Steve Kaufman is saying here is actually... he is explaining an overall theory that a lot of people, a lot of researchers, are proponents of. So it isn't just like... he isn't just like giving Steve's opinion here. He's
deeper into the math metaphor, because when we're talking about networks, at the end of the day, we're talking about graph theory. Flashcards treat words, phrases, and sentences like they're discrete nodes in a language.
Okay. This is interesting. This is, it's wild, because I did not watch this at all. But he has so completely actually touched on the exact issue here. Now, I'm not sure whether I'm necessarily going to follow him entirely through here, because I never thought of it in this way, but I'm interested.
Okay. So we've got flashcard model, discrete over here, and then graph theory.
I mean, I'm encouraged by the fact that he's recognizing that he's talking about this as two completely different models, two different ways of thinking about the nature of the thing that's going on. And that is absolutely crucial to this, and it is a big part of what makes Evildea's videos on these things so frustrating, because he really doesn't get it.
Actually, this is wrong, but I'll let him play it out.
Once collected, allow you to speak that language and understand that language fluently.
Okay, let's go back. I'm going to look at your graph, and I'm going to show you that this is actually wrong.
Okay.
Okay, so you basically stating that flashcards here are just like these individual units, okay?
Yeah.
And
they are. They're not connected to anything. That is the point.
They will always just be these individual units. Now, as a data...
I mean, I don't think he's actually necessarily saying that the theory is that they will always be these individual units. I think he is saying that the intention is for them to become something more than that. But that actually, when you do it this way, it's unlikely to happen. But we'll see how this plays out.
Point. That can be true, but it can also be false. I have a video where I actually show flashcards being generated on the fly. So ones that I didn't generate, they are literally being generated by large groupings of nouns, adjectives, structures, whatnot, okay? So technically this is not true, but let's go based on the Anki example, okay? So the Anki example, this is not how a flashcard would work.
Maybe let him finish, because I believe what he's saying is that each of those things, each of those nodes is a pairing, you know, between word and meaning or something like that.
Okay, it actually does work like what you've got over here, because what I do is I create a flashcard that represents, say, this word, this word, this word, and the structures that go between. This is what I mean by structures, the connections that...
Yeah, but the problem with flashcards is they're based on conceptualizing the whole thing as a rote memorization task, where it's like you have a word and you have its meaning, or a sound and a meaning, or whatever. And that actually does create, that is going to be in isolation no matter what, because it is depriving it of all of the context that makes language acquisition likely. You know, they're not happening, you know, these words and phrases are not happening in a situation. They're not happening in an interaction. They're just happening in sort of a sterile pairing. So it's not really the same thing.
Connect these words. And what you're learning is just to pop these parts in and out, okay? So essentially, you're learning via the flashcards and the practicing of the flashcards, this type of connection structure that goes between the words, okay? So the weighting almost. And now obviously there is certain words, let's say at the beginning here, that will always be there no matter what you pop out in this.
Yeah, I feel like he would do better to wait and hear, because I'm actually not entirely sure where he's going here, because I don't really conceptualize it in this particular way, probably because in part graph theory isn't something I've spent any time with at all.
Center, okay, because that's just a part of the language. Like it just does not work if you don't have that word there. So what we're practicing is a structure and the words that make up that structure, and then teaching our brain what parts are basically poppable. And I talk about poppable.
Yeah, but I mean, again, this is not.
I'm talking from a computer perspective, or
this is part of the problem. He's talking about it from a perspective that has nothing to do with language acquisition.
Programming perspective right now, because I am a programmer and we're starting to step into my territory.
Fluently. Whereas comprehensible input isn't about individual nodes. It's much more about the edges or the web of connections between them.
It is about the whole. It is about, it is actually about, it is about the whole thing, and you get everything from the whole.
Nodes. When you learn a word or sentence.
Yeah, so this is where your misunderstanding is.
Actually, I mean, it's not his misunderstanding, though.
Okay, you're looking at this from a math perspective. I'm looking at this from a programming perspective.
Well, see, that's why it's not his misunderstanding, because he's actually understanding very much what what we're talking about, and you, Evildea, not so much.
It's the same thing. So for
no, it isn't the same thing. Like, it's great. Somebody is actually trying to explain this to him, and he's finding a way not to understand it.
Programming perspective, a node, okay, if we were to look at this as a programmer, how a node works is the node contains the information, then it contains the connections that go to the other nodes, and it contains the weighting of that connection.
But the point he's making is that it isn't about the individual nodes, it's about the whole. It's about the whole universe in which those individual nodes are, and all of the connections between them and other things.
Okay, so here we can make a debate. Is the flashcard the node with the individual word, or is the flashcard now a grouping of nodes representing the various connections between those nodes?
And I mean, again, there's not really a debate there. Because, again, it is a pairing. You have one side and you have another side. And the pairing, I mean, everything he's given an example of, every one of, like, showing his flashcards, thinking that he was refuting this in the previous video, it was not refuting it. Because in each case you have a pairing. It is, you have target language word or phrase on one side, English word or phrase on the other side, or target language sound on one side, English meaning on the other. That is, those are pairings. Those are individual nodes in that sense.
A set grouping. It's almost like if we were doing a pathfinding algorithm between 2 points.
Like, so, the thing is, to the extent... See, again, graph theory is not my area. To the extent that Evildea is right about this, he's only right about graph theory. He's not... He's just not understanding how it's being applied to language acquisition, because he does not fundamentally understand the difference.
A flashcard could be representing a pathfinding, the outcome of a pathfinding algorithm between multiple different nodes and the most likely connection that they would take. Basically, you're training your brain that this is a set path that you should take, and yet there are certain parts that can swap out. So,
yeah. He's decided to take this and just sort of retreat out of language acquisition altogether and just make it a discussion of, like, fucking, of graph theory as it pertains to programming. And that's the problem. He's, like, just fundamentally resistant to the idea that there is another completely different model at work here.
I feel like we're going down into a semantics debate right now.
Again, and and this guy's actually... This is twice now where we've watched a video where somebody knowledgeable will try to point out what the difference here is, what the significance of this is, and he's just like, no, it's just semantics. And it's like, no, it's not fucking semantics. It's like, it's a completely different model of the thing.
And flashcards are not a node. They can be, and that's what I was saying. Don't let them be a node. Don't let them be an individual word. But they can also be representative of a set of connections.
Yeah, but in the end, that does not change the point. That fundamentally does not change the point, because, and this is why I'm beginning to find that maybe graph theory isn't the greatest way to think about this. Because fundamentally, the difference here, the difference in model, is between rote learning of words and phrases and sounds, just to like cramming large and developing a rich collection of neural connections between concepts and sounds through input.
It's from a flashcard. It's
like whether this is a memory task primarily, or whether it is a kind of it is a task in itself, like that is in key respects fundamentally unique amongst human activities.
Completely self-contained. It's a discrete node on a graph. Even if you do full sentences to reinforce one structure or something similar, you're still only creating connections or edges between the words or nodes in that one sentence.
That is true in that instance, but that is easy to get around if you really want. You could just create a program that automatically generates and swaps out literally anything in there. But
yeah, but the problem remains, like the fundamental difference between these methods, between these entire models, remains. And he just, it's like, he really is resistant to theory.
Again, flashcards, the point of them is not to try and replicate the entire language. Like, I don't know why we're heading down that path. I clearly say in my video, which was a response to Steve, that the purpose of a flashcard is to help you with set structures and to prime your brain for hearing set.
That is not what he said. That is what Steve said. That is not what he said.
Structures.
You encounter a word or sentence in input, it's never self-contained. Every encounter quietly connects each word to each other word, even just tangentially related to that input, automatically.
Yes, that is true. However, again, there is going to be certain...
That's not a yes, that is true, and you just sort of hand wave it away. This is what the whole thing's about. Like, the minute you say that, the minute that necessarily has all sorts of methodological conclusions.
And connections between those words, which are undisputably part of an overriding structure, okay? Again, to give an example with Mandarin Chinese, okay? So in Mandarin Chinese, early on, you will learn in any textbook that if you want to use the although structure, yes, there's multiple ways to say it, but you would start with a set word, which represents although, and then you'd slap a set word, which then becomes like basically the after part. So you got although A, but B.
Yes. See, the difference here, yeah, that's true. Like, that is part of the nature of the structure. But the issue here is not, like, okay, so you're drilling and memorizing the structure. Is based on one particular model that has to do with, like, memorization. Like, that this is a memorization task, fundamentally. Or you introduce the structure in a context, like... You say you have you're discussing a subject, and at an appropriate moment you say, although A is true, B is also true, or something like that, in a way that makes it comprehensible, and you you just kind of have different ways that you are bringing up that structure over and over again in a particular context where somebody is already like getting meanings from things. That is just a very different thing, because it is connecting it to all sorts of stuff. It is coming, then you're getting it when it is already connected in all sorts of directions, as opposed to having it in sort of isolation and then having to try to connect it up with stuff.
Okay, now they teach you that there's a set structure here, okay? Now, although it's not just going to randomly appear between two completely unrelated things, it's not going to be...
I mean, I don't know, I've read enough comments on the internet that non sequiturs definitely exist.
Why, although massive, although input beats, although flashcards, like, it doesn't, the structure will never appear. Yeah. Okay, unless someone makes an error in speaking the language. But the chances of it appearing within a certain structure, and that structure being representative of how it's used, like the vast majority of the time, that's a great instance for flashcards.
It is, but only if the idea is just to memorize the structure as opposed to acquiring the language.
because there's continuity. You're not just building nodes, you're growing a web of connections between nodes that you did not deliberately construct.
Yes. Again, it is the whole versus like individual little bits that you're sort of drilling and hoping that it is going to eventually turn into a whole. That is the difference. You learn from the whole as opposed to like getting like lots of little components that theoretically could form the whole.
So here is a good example of how this is basically a semantics argument. Or
no, okay. This is going to be a great example of how he just fundamentally does not understand the topic.
Or an argument in how far down you're going to dig into this unfolding tree, okay? Because right now you put all your videos right here in the middle. Now, are your videos, are they representative of nodes? With connections between each of the videos, or are we going to break down each video into its individual...
God, you should not have used graph theory, because now all he's trying to do is, like, debate the analogy. That was a very unfortunate choice. It's just giving him another way not to understand.
Parts, which then those individual parts become nodes, so the chapters of that video, or are we going to break it down into the individual ideas of that? So this just becomes a recursive tree. At what point do you stop calling something a node? I don't...
Yeah, that's not what this discussion is about. Fucking hell. It's about whether you're acquiring language via the whole, or by by like memorizing individual component parts. That is what we're talking about here. And he really just, I don't know, is he deliberately avoiding this point?
I don't even know why we're having this.
Like, Chad, like, is he deliberately, does he not understand that this is what this is about, or is he deliberately trying not to understand? I really, at this point, am confused.
This debate, but as a programmer, I can't help but not say, wait a second, you're just categorizing these things at a different level to me.
And this...
No, it isn't. There's a reason that what you've got in one case is the entire graph, and the other case, what you're talking about, is individual discrete nodes. It's because it's the whole versus individual little bits.
Model, we can still treat words like nodes, but the nodes themselves are not where the information primarily lives. The
information exists in both places, so that is actually incorrect. You have...
Maybe listen to him, because he's trying to explain a fundamentally different model, and that maybe you would learn something if you let him finish.
Both the information in the node and then the information associated within the edges.
Because what his point here is that the real information, what the language is contained in the connections between these individual nodes more than it is contained in the nodes themselves. That's the point he's trying to make. And I just really do not get... Is Elmo holding him hostage? Is Elmo going to hurt him if he does not acknowledge this actually fairly well explained point?
Node, the edges are meaningless. Without the edges, the node is unable to connect with anything else.
Information lives in the innumerable edges connecting each node to every other node. That's basically the model for how Steve is suggesting language is stored.
Yeah, and I don't even know why we're debating this.
Well, because it is fundamental to your misunderstanding. I mean, I agree, it's not a debate. It's like you just don't know basic things about the thing that you're arguing against.
The reason I say I don't know why we're debating this is because
you don't understand what the stakes of the discussion are.
Who cares how it works under the scenes as long as the outcome is what you want?
Fucking hell. The point is that if you want that outcome, you have to use methods that take into account the way that it actually works behind the scenes. That's the point. That's the point. When you when you acknowledge that's what's going on, what the underlying process is, what the underlying thing is this collection of connections and edges and whatever, however you want to call it, then that recommends a completely different set of methodologies in order to actually develop those connections. The way you develop them is going to be fundamentally different. If, on the other hand, you're saying you have like these individual bits of information that you're memorizing, it's fundamentally a memorization task, then that implies a completely different understanding of how the whole thing works. That is the entire discussion here. That is like the foundation. That is what this whole thing is about. That's why we're talking about it.
To achieve. I've shown, by using set structures, I am able to reproduce set parts of the language without having to think about them. And
yeah. I mean, isn't there a meme? I think there's like a whole genre of memes where it's like somebody where somebody has something explained to them in a concise way that they're getting wrong, and then they just immediately say the same thing that they said all over and over again. Like, and what is his refutation here? His refutation of why it of like the entire idea that there are like different models, I guess, is what he's arguing against now. I've lost track. Is that he has memorized structures and can reproduce them on command. Like, that is actually an example of what we're talking about, the difference between the models. Because there's a big difference between, like, if you experience a whole bunch of Thai input and then you just spontaneously get in your brain phrases about English people eating pillows in a certain quantity. And you being able to say on command, I am allergic to eggs. Like, these are fundamentally different things that are going on, and it is a fundamentally different model. And what he's doing, like, because being able to say, I am allergic to eggs on command is not knowing Chinese. I think he would probably not disagree with my saying that. I think that he would agree that that is true. That isn't knowing Chinese, that is like at most knowing a phrase. The question is, do you come to the point of knowing Chinese by having a whole bunch of phrases that you've memorized and can rattle off on command, or by having a network of connections between concepts and structures and sounds and everything that, when put into practice, has you speaking in a way that native Chinese speakers understand?
And I've done this to the point where I got really, really good at Esperanto, and I basically never make mistakes. I will make mistakes every now and then, okay, when I'm speaking the language. But I practice those set structures so much to the point that, for me, they are 100% completely automated. And of course, I've done a shite ton of input, like that. Just makes sense, okay? The input just reinforces all of the...
No, you got it backwards.
Those connections. Now, the way I see
the connections come from the input, actually. Like, literally, to the extent that those connections are there, they come from the input.
And I've said, is that the flashcards complement the input. Okay, or you could say,
which is like the exact reverse of what he just said, because a second ago the input was like was just an adjunct to his rote memorization of structures, and now the flashcards are just an adjunct to input, which I can't help noticing is not what he was saying the last time. It was what Steve was saying. I think that he is somebody who tries to avoid complexity on a certain level. He is somebody who is very uncomfortable with overarching theory and big picture things outside of very specific contexts. I mean, in this sense, and only in this sense, he reminds me a lot of, like, Destiny. I want to be extremely clear, only in this sense, because otherwise that's kind of libelous. Because he, too, really does not want to get into overarching theory. He wants to just, like, look at very, very small things. Oh yeah, I mean, Orlando, that's true. That is a different sort of situation. There you have the language, and you're trying to remember a specific thing. Yeah, I mean, that is a different use case. I would agree with that.
The input complements, it doesn't matter, but I see it as the flashcards complement.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he really does not want to get into overarching theories and models and things like that, because it would actually involve him having to come at it from a position of really not knowing about it. And he likes to be, like, confidently... He likes to speak with confidence about things. So it is much more comfortable for him to engage with it in terms of, no, you're doing your graph theory analogy wrong, mate. This is not how a graph theory works. I'm a fucking programmer, mate. I know how graph theory works. These are not nodes. These are not fucking nodes, mate. You got it wrong, mate. And everything. And rather than saying, okay, what is he trying to tell me about the difference in the fundamental model between the thing that, other than the way I conceptualize all this, and the way that these models that are based on input conceptualize all this. Because the idea that there is a fundamental conceptualization difference, actually, I feel like he's just uncomfortable with that, because it requires thinking about things in a fundamentally different way.
The input. You should be doing what? Like, well, I say should, if you want to do it or not, but, you know, do like freaking 15, 30 minutes of flashcards a day, and then the rest of the time do your input or your grammar study, whatever.
In the brain. And he's contrasting that with the much more discrete network model that flashcards implicate. This graph of discrete nodes that flashcards implicates is a reduction of the file cabinet model. So yes, therefore, I do think flashcards rely on this The
file cabinet model, for anyone who doesn't remember, is this idea that our brain's like a file cabinet. And when we learn things, whether it's languages or, like, how to make hummus or whatever, you are taking information, and then you are storing it in a particular location in your brain, and it's analogized as a file cabinet. And it comes into here because that was crucial to the thinking of the people who, like, invented flashcards in the first place. This idea that the brain is a big, like, very wet file of facts.
Cabinet model.
You can even do the whole pattern recognition thing. I often do. Like, I don't create just one flashcard. This is just a categorization problem.
Now he's got two Elmos. Okay, now we got the...
At the moment, you can go up or down as deep as you want in this tree and say this is the file cabinet level.
No. The point is that if you're saying that it's a file cabinet, you're conceptualizing the task in a fundamentally different way. What people who are proponents of input-based approaches and all the research that supports all that are saying is that the file cabinet is wrong, that is not how the brain works. And actually, lots of neuroscientists at this point who are actually looking at it in a much broader sense, not just talking about language or whatever. At this point, like, nobody seriously thinks that the file cabinet model is an accurate way of describing what the brain does when it, picks up a piece of information or remembers a thing. So the file cabinet model, the problem isn't like what level you conceptualize the file cabinet as being at. The problem is that the file cabinet model is bullshit.
Realistically. Like, you could go right down to the individual word layer, or you could go all the way up the top until, like, an entire paragraph, and still say that's still a file cabinet. Okay.
Yeah, well, yes, if it is being treated that way. If the way that you're trying to learn these things is by memorizing them in whatever way, like memorizing them as a phrase, memorizing them as a pairing between words and meaning, memorizing them as a pairing between words and images or words and sounds or whatever. Like, if you are conceptualizing the task as memorizing things, then you're putting stuff in a file cabinet. That's what the file cabinet model is about. Like, it is not a question of where the file cabinet is. The debate, to the extent that you can really call it one, because really it's kind of been settled, is whether there's a file cabinet at all, or whether that's a bad analogy.
Like, I'm just looking at it from a programmer's perspective.
This is, like, maybe the problem. Maybe you should try looking at it from the perspective of somebody who wants to understand how language works. Because the thing is, programming languages, this is part of the problem, because programming languages do not work at all like human languages. I mean, I can say this is one of the few things I've been able to take away from my various attempts to learn programming, is that human language and programming language are totally different things. They operate in a fundamentally different way. And if your concept of language includes like Perl or something, naturally it's going to screw up your idea of how language acquisition works, because, like, human language just does not work like this.
Programmer's perspective, we don't name these levels. Like, every level is just another level per word. Again, you don't have to just do one. You could do as many as you could have fucking 60 flashcards for one verb in all its different possible contexts if you want.
Yeah, I mean, he had that wrong. What's interesting is that really, can you give an example of one of these these non-predicted behaviors?
6 folders is still 6 folders. 60 folders is still 60 folders. The information still lives in discrete folders, and your brain is being trained to retrieve them like they're discrete entries.
Again, he's trying. Okay, so we've moved away from graph theory, and that's probably a good idea. And he's just going back to just saying the brain isn't a fucking file of facts. Will this work this time? I'm rooting for you, Evildea. Learn a thing today.
Steve and I are...
That's actually a good thing. That is a good thing, if you train your brain to do that.
The point is, that's not how brains work. Like, this motherfucker is like the Iron Dome of point missing. It's just like, I mean, he just, like, a point shows up on the radar. There's a point coming in on the radar, and this shit just flies. He just flies right past it.
It allows...
Yeah, but that's not really actually a really surprising thing, since LLMs are trained, all they're doing really is taking stuff from their training data sets, and these days their training data sets are overwhelmingly made up of LLM slop.
You to easily output entire thoughts without having to stop and go through each one of those thoughts. If you combine, like, 2 separate chunks, okay, in Chinese. 在这个视频里, so that one chunk is in this video. That chunk could be in the previous video, in the next video, in this Chinese video, and whatever video, okay? So that's...
Well, the thing is, the thing to understand is that even the LLMs do not understand it, because they don't understand things. All they do is predict. They have a statistical model that predicts what the most likely word to come next will be. They're doing sophisticated statistical predictions. And so the more the model... See, what this is actually... The term for this is actually model collapse. Because supposedly these LLMs are supposed to be able to do these predictions on human language, but their data set comes from the internet, and the internet is now full of stuff generated by LLMs. And so the result is that their probability judgments are based on crap that LLMs produce. And so it is increasingly just turning into crap. Even crapper crap. It isn't even like polished crap. It is an unpolished turd. Speaking of which,
chunk is 我们讨论这个话题. We are discussing this topic. Now,
I mean, even the way he conceives of it, he's talking about very discrete nodes.
We could be discussing this topic, we could be discussing that topic, we could be discussing the movie, we could be discussing anything. We've got two separate chunks here, okay? Now, I could work with the idea that instead of using chunks, I just try to recall each piece.
That's not the idea either, because again, it's not about information retrieval. The idea is you watch a whole lot of like videos in Chinese, and they will inevitably include phrases like this. And gradually you get used to the way that people are saying them. And it becomes a thing that you can just kind of say when you have occasion to say it. This is like the level of surgical precision with which he misses points.
Okay, so in this video, so in comes at the end in Chinese, that's a li, and then the location actually goes first in Chinese, so that's zai. Like, I could do it that way, or I could just practice that entire chunk. Now, whether you want to call that a folder model or whatnot, it doesn't matter at the end of the day.
Yes, it does. It does, because if your brain does not work like that, then methods that are based on the assumption that your brain works like that are garbage, actually. That's the point. That's why it matters. Because if your brain works one way and your method assumes your brain doesn't work that way and works a completely different way, your method is going to suck. What your method is going to be good at, the outcome that it will get is sucking. It will outperform its sector at sucking. That is why it matters. It matters because if your brain works a completely different way, and I mean, pretty much everything I've seen in neuroscience rejects this idea, this file cabinet metaphor that never really made a huge amount of sense anyway, then you need methods that actually leverage the way that your brain does work. That's the point.
What matters is it actually usable? Like, is it useful? And it is.
And the point is, it really isn't, and this is why a lot of people with these methods just do not get very good outcomes. Because when you're trying to get your brain to do a thing your brain does not do, you're necessarily not going to get a great outcome. I mean, you might memorize a bunch of shit, but it's not going to give you what. But if your goal is more than just to memorize stuff, if your goal is more than just to be able to rattle off certain phrases on command, then it's going to be disappointing. The method isn't going to help you very much. Like, I mean, the methods necessarily depend on your concept of what your brain is doing at the end of the day. This is, I mean...
It is extremely useful.
Thing is, for effective acquisition, we don't need to add more nodes, we need to add more edges. And not just more edges, but like innumerably more edges. And that's why I call it a category error, because at the end...
Yeah, Here's the thing though, so you can add as many edges as you want, but if you don't practice walking those edges, which is the production deck you showed, those edges will remain weak.
The mistake was using the fucking graph theory thing, because he's just decided he's going to avoid talking about the thing. He's going to use graph theory to avoid talking about the thing. The idea was to use graph theory to hopefully be able to get him, make the thing more accessible to him. And instead, it has just given him a way to avoid talking about it.
You need to walk them. And to walk them, you need to practice them. And to practice them, that's where spaced repetition comes in. It's very...
Yeah. Like, I mean, but he's not talking about just spaced repetition in general, because if you look at, like, input-based methods, one of the things that is remarkable in this comprehensible Thai course is the amount of spaced repetitions that goes on. Like, they will come back to things. You get callbacks all the time from, like, earlier in the lesson, from the last video, whatever, so that you are being brought back to stuff that you encountered previously. That is a very useful kind of spaced repetition, because it's giving you all this context. It's giving you all these connections, all of these edges, or whatever you want to call them. Yeah, he's talking about, yeah, exactly. He's talking about this as if it wasn't about, like, learning methods and theory and stuff, because it's like he does not want to talk about theory.
Very handy for practicing the most likely edges you are to walk. It's a pathfinding algorithm. The first time you
No, it isn't.
Perform a pathfinding algorithm without caching the path that you followed, you're going to go in every single direction, but you'll eventually get there. It's going to be...
No.
Slow, it's going to be painful. The second time...
This is slow and painful.
You perform it, because you've cached the first time, you know the path you need to go, because you've...
Like, all we've done, Nick, whoever you are, you've created a monster. You've helped him find a whole new way to avoid actually understanding any of this. I know you had the best of intentions, but look at what you have wrought.
Walked it before. That's the point. Now, whether that removes context or whatnot doesn't really matter, because...
Yes, it fucking does. Yeah, okay. And with that, I just noticed the time. It is time to wrap up. Thank you to everyone who joined in. I hope you enjoyed this stream. And if you enjoyed the stream and would like to support my work, I'm going to drop a couple of links in chat on the best way to go about doing that. And where you can find some of my other work as well. Spread the word, make make contributions if you can and you feel so inclined. Read the project, read the stuff that I'm translating. It's interesting stuff that you might find. In any case, you will find the links to do all of those things right in the chat right now. And I will be back at 4:30 p.m. US Eastern Time on Friday, this coming Friday. I look forward to seeing you all then. And until then, I'm gonna go and recover from the enormous frustration of watching this motherfucker just it's like he downloaded some sort of program from Matrix to the Matrix for acrobatically avoiding the point.